Okay, we are back in business here. We are live. Hi, welcome to the Meat, Body, and Soul live episode here. I have a new study on a meat-based approach that just came out March 2025, and I couldn't wait to come on and do a live segment here about this actual study. So I'm hearing myself in the background here, so let me go into where I can take care of that. I don't want to hear myself talk. I want to be able to talk to you guys. So if you guys have questions, please start asking them in the chat and I will be happy to get to those. Also, if you have any studies that you want to share around this topic on a meat-based approach, a carnivore approach, I am all ears because I have gathered not just this recent one in March, but I've actually looked back and started gathering the ones I could find, in 2020, 2021, all these different studies that have come about with the aspect of talking about carnivore diets or meat-based approach. There's not a lot out there. So what I've put together for you is something that I think is really important. So I'm trying to see the chat here. If anybody wants to help me figure that out, I am not seeing it as of right now. I know it's there, but I'm not on the page to see it. So I hope that you can help me out here. Gosh, I like to do lives, but I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. So let's just go right into this and I'll see if I can figure it out as I go. Um, so since we're on the topic of studies, I found that it's important to give undue respect and break some myths about meat with some other studies before we dive into this one on this 2025 that just happened here in March. And I will say that they put together in this study a food guide pyramid that is no longer what we were used to. So this actually has flipped that food guide pyramid, which we all thought that they should do at some point in time, where meat is the mainstay. And that's what I wanted to get on the topic of today is like, we really should be focusing on meat first and then adding in those foods that resonate with our body. And that is bioindividuality. Now, somebody who feels really good on something like blueberries, for the next person, it might cause a blood sugar spike. So there's always that bioindividuality that I believe in when I work with clients. I want to make sure that I'm listening to their body. I'm making sure that they are getting what their body needs and not as compared to, like, let's say I work with a lot of people that follow the repeat way of eating. Not that there's anything wrong with that. The pro-metabolic way can be really great for some people. But for others, I've had to undo a lot of damage, such as like they drink a ton of milk and they don't know why they're putting on weight, or they drink a ton of orange juice and they don't know why now they're pre-diabetic. Okay. What worked for Dr. Pete doesn't always work for everybody in the traditional sense. And Dr. Pete would never say that. He would never say everybody should eat the way I'm eating. What he did was he gave you research and he decided that he wanted to share that research because he cared about people. What we have to do is care enough about ourselves and trust ourselves enough to know that we know what's best for our bodies. So take a moment and instead of listening to all the diet dogma out there, go, what foods do I not see in my stool when I eat them? Meat is probably one of those. Most people are not going to see steak when they eat it in their stool. However, you eat corn, you eat things like carrots, you eat beets, you might see that in your stool. So that may be an indication that either A, your body's getting rid of stuff it can't use, which why take in stuff we can't use, or B, it's not breaking down. And that's important to know because digestion and assimilation is very important. Okay, so I'm still trying to figure out how to see the chat here. So let me see what I can do. I'm going to try to go into this setting. So just bear with me for a second while I'm figuring this out. I know that there's a way to do this because I did it last time and I'm just not seeing it without pulling up my video and hearing myself talk in the background. So I don't want that to be the case. Stand by. I'm just going to try to get into my little blocker here. There should be a way that I can see my little channel, my little funnel where I go in and I see things. So I'm not seeing where that is. Okay, so maybe I won't be able to see the chat because for now I'm not seeing where to pull that up at. So what I'd like to talk about first is a study the case for meat today, why I preach animal protein first. That's why we're on here today. Let's go into a little bit of chronological order with these studies leading up to this one in March with the carnivore pyramid that I mentioned. Because to date, there hasn't been much research on carnivore diets. Yet, when you combine it with logical, sound reasoning of human biology, which I'll get into in a little bit, you can't negate the fact that we need to be consuming more animal-based foods. And that's why I rebranded to Meat, Body, and Soul, because yes, I've worked with vegans, I've worked with vegetarians, but I have not seen the results in their health that I've seen with people who adopt a meat-based approach. Whether that includes other foods or not, when someone is eating adequate animal protein, they are getting the results that they're looking for. So, when we look back, you can go as far back as like there's a book called The Stone Age Diet. You can go to some of your libraries and get these old books about people who did a whole year on a meat-based approach and what happened to them. A, they didn't die. No, they didn't have rabbit starvation. Actually, they flourished and they felt really good. So there's all these things you can look back at. I'm just going back just to the most recent studies that are evidential of what's happening with this big carnivore movement, so to speak. So the first one is a study that a lot of people have heard about, the Harvard study, the current developments in nutrition journal. It said, contrary to common expectations, adults consuming a carnivore diet experienced few adverse effects and instead reported health benefits and high satisfaction, which I can attest to because a lot of people that eat an animal-based approach, their sugar cravings go away. Did you know that? Did you know that a lot of sugar cravings can actually be due to the fact that you are not getting enough protein, you're not getting enough fat. And when you combine fat and protein, such as like in a fatty cut of meat, most people, and I've had a lot of clients email me and go, why am I not having sugar cravings? I always crave sugar, and that's one of my biggest hangups, but all of a sudden I'm not. That's because your body is experiencing satiety. It's actually digesting slower, it's assimilating its nutrients, it's getting the amino acids that calm down the brain from cravings as well. So in this study in Harvard, 100% of the diabetics in the study, not one or two, all of them, came off injectable medications. And there was a 90% improvement in all diseases that were mentioned in the study. So I thought that was ginormous. I love that. So um, that was just a study that if you want to go in and read about it, it's a really interesting study. There's more to it than what I said, but that was like kind of one of the first things that I had tapped into. Now, the next one is one that was a study in December 2024, so pretty recently, but it had showed that it said the following: the carnivore diet met several thresholds for nutrients such as riboflavin, niacin, phosphorus, zinc, B6, B12, selenium, vitamin A, and exceeded the sodium threshold. So people, which I think is a good thing because we're salty people, we cry seawater, we bleed seawater, the baby swims in seawater. So we always need to replenish that sodium that we're losing throughout the day. And so it ended with the carnivore diet may offer benefits for managing certain chronic conditions. Okay, and that's what I've seen be the case. After teaching, educating my clients for over 20 years, I've learned three things, which is why it's called Meat, Body, and Soul, that works for every human body. Protein, first and foremost, our body, those are the building blocks. They're essential to the body. Circadian rhythm. So when I can fix somebody's circadian rhythm, I can fix their day and night cycle, their sleep improves, their health improves, their moods improve, their weight improves, and addressing stress and trauma, which a lot of people don't do or they miss the boat on. That's a huge piece of health, is going into the why do I feel this way? Why do I do these things? Why do I have these habits over and over that I really just can't figure out why I do that? Okay. So for instance, let me get a little vulnerable with you right now. I am 44. At this age, for my mother, was when she was diagnosed with stomach cancer, March of 98. So it would have been this age that she was at. She was 44 years old in March. And I just got through March and I had like this restless feeling recently, just moving into early April. I had like this feeling of like something's not right. Like I feel out of sorts. I feel like I can't control anything. I've been having a lot of like feelings of what my life feels like it's chaos or it's stuck. And I finally realized, based on some work I do with my clients and a book that I've read and that I've recommended to clients, oh my gosh, I know what this is. I had to think through my past and I had to go, this trauma that I'm feeling is not mine. This was my mom's. I was actually feeling what she went through. And I was, either subconsciously or consciously, I'd thought about like, I'm the age that she was when she was diagnosed with cancer. And whatever the case may be, I was starting to carry that trauma. And so we do that. There's a book called It Didn't Start With You, and we can actually carry our ancestors' trauma. Not only can we know what they went through and kind of go, wow, at this age, so and so died. I wonder if that's what's going to happen to me. And we can kind of manifest things. But also, just as I got, curly hair from my dad and blonde hair from my dad, I also can inherit some nicks in my DNA from trauma that he didn't process. Okay. We don't just inherit like blue eyes and blonde hair, we can inherit trauma. And we have to process that in a way that's actually not processing. We have to go, like I tell myself, not my trauma from my mama. Like that's, it's not for me. I don't live my life the way that my mom did. When it comes to her health, she burnt the candle at both ends. She didn't hardly eat anything. And when she did, it was Diet Coke or pretzels. I don't live that way. I go to bed at 8:30. I get up and I do meditation and red light and things that calm my nervous system down. She never did stuff like that. She worked in a blue lit hospital. So I don't have to think that the things that happen to her are going to happen to me because I live completely differently than she did. So I let that go. And that freedom of addressing emotional stress and trauma, I know I'm way off, but this is my life, so I can do a rant on, on life things. But it goes along with the soul part of meat, body, and soul. Okay, so you have to address the trauma. You have to address things that maybe even aren't yours and let them go so that they don't continue to affect your health. So that's just a little tangent I had to go on. But basically, those three things are why I call my business what I do, and also what I see works with clients. So I will be preaching protein till I die. I always say that. And I have seen how adequate animal protein heals and rebuilds the body in a variety of ways: gut issues, thyroid issues, diabetes, autoimmune, all reversed when I've had clients go on a meat-based approach. Not necessarily, like I said, carnivore. It doesn't have to be that. It can be that I meat and then foods that work with their body, boosting neurotransmitters for better moods and less anxiety, thwarting cravings. Okay, I had a client that could not get rid of her cravings for sugar until she went meat-based and let go of a lot of other foods. Repairing a damaged gut. You can do that within a week. Within a week, I've seen people go, wow, my poop is way different. I'm not feeling digestion. That can happen within a week's time. Loss of stubborn fat that won't budge. I've seen this time and again. People are like, I've tried everything. And now all of a sudden it's just fallen off. Reversal of autoimmune issues, like even things like lupus. And like I mentioned, satisfaction and satiety, since protein is nature's GLP-1 agonist. So if you don't want to go on a shot, then just look at a meat-based approach because it can do virtually the same thing, okay, without the negative side effects too. So before we go into this study that I wanted to mention, I'm going to break it down for you, this 2025 March study, but I want to go back to common sense. Okay, so common sense has died because no one knew that it died because nobody seems to have any common sense. But logically, this time of year, now it is kind of spring and things are springing and there's edible flowers. I don't know if you know this, but red buds are edible. Okay, the little red bud flowers, those are actually edible. And so while there is some things in nature, some plant foods that are available right now, if you didn't have grocery stores and you didn't have convenience stores and you didn't have ways to get food, how would you eat? Farmers markets? No. How would you eat? You would have to go out into nature and find food. Okay. What would you have available to you? Yeah, you'd have some grasses, you've had some edible plants, but that's not going to be enough calories to always sustain you. What you have access to all year round, and especially the time of year when there is no plant foods, like in the winter, is animal proteins. So if I had to go out, obviously I would need to know how to fish or hunt for my meat, but I could eat because that is always available. Also, common sense logic. If you read a book, there's an old book called Neanderthal, and the science in that shows that our stomach, our digestive tract, is very similar to a certain animal's stomach, and it's not a ruminant animal, it's actually a wolf. We are very closely related digestive-wise to a wolf's digestive system. We have a high amount of acid. We have a very short, what they call colon, small intestine area that's shorter in nature than some of the other animals. So that's something that makes us think, we should do well on meat if we have those kinds of things. Also, common sense, like I said, you see corn in your stool, you see carrots, you see beets, you see roughage, salads. People will tell me all the time, I'm seeing like I ate a salad and it comes out in the toilet. Okay, that's not good. Like we need to be digesting the food that we're taking in. So if half of it is coming out in the stool, then we need to look at why. Okay, are you not digesting it, or is that food just not something that your body needs? Now, no one has ever told me, maybe they've told you, or maybe you've seen this, but I have not seen this. No one has ever said, I saw steak in my stool, I saw pork chop in my stool, I saw salmon in my stool. No one has said that. So that tells me that our body loves those amino acids and our muscles soak it up because that's how we replenish the tissue in our body. And when I want to build bone for someone who has osteopenia or osteoporosis, I don't want them on a calcium supplement. I want them to eat animal protein because bone is living tissue and tissue is built by amino acids. So when I put somebody on a high protein protocol, they're actually going to see their osteopenia and osteoporosis reverse. They're going to stop breaking down bone because their body is getting the tissue rebuilding properties that it needs. Okay, if you show up to a construction site and you want to build a house, but you have no wood, or other materials, concrete or whatever you're building the house out of, you're not going to build the house. You can't just show up with like mud and hay and stuff that the little piggies showed up with when they were building their houses. You have to have sustainable things, and that's where that protein comes in. Okay, so it's important that we look at things logically. And yeah, science is great. I'm about to share some really cool science with you. But logically, common sense, go back to Weston A. Price. Did he find a culture that was vegan or vegetarian that was thriving? No, all of them were eating a meat-based approach or had some sort of meat in their diet. So just common sense and logic, let's go back to that because that I think encompasses how you make decisions, right? Not just based on science. Okay, so now we get to crack down the latest study. And I'm really sorry that I can't see the chat. If you're chatting with me, I apologize because I have no idea how to do this. I'm kind of like really not tech savvy. You're lucky I'm even on here that I've figured out how to integrate Zoom with YouTube. That's huge for me. So I'm an outdoorsy person. I'm usually on my paddleboard or outside in the sunshine. So the fact that I could sit here and do this is kind of a miracle. Okay, so you can find this study, and I'll actually be linking it as well, by just Googling, myths and facts regarding low carbohydrate diets. That's the title of it, okay? You can also do like NDPI was the journal that it's in, or the nutrients, it's in the Journal of Nutrients. You can Google carnivore study or low carb study. And it is more of a low carb approach, but anytime you're cutting carbohydrates, you're going to have higher amounts of protein and higher amounts of fat to have a sustainable diet. Okay. So the authors in this, they said the following: we hope to show this approach has been well researched and can no longer be seen as a fad diet with adverse health effects such as impaired renal function or increased heart disease. So what they're saying is this low carb, this carnivore approach no longer should be seen as just another fad out there that you're following. This actually can be beneficial to your health in a variety of ways. So they go into the different myths that are out there regarding things like higher fat, higher protein intakes. So I'm going to like debunk some of these. So the first debunking we're going to do is that you need carbohydrates. Now, this has always been kind of questionable for me because I go along with the happenstance that our body can make carbohydrates very easily. Like you could eat nothing and you can have gluconeogenesis happen. Glucose, neo means new, glucose is sugar, genesis is creation. So our body is very adaptable at making its own sugar. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, though, because when we don't eat or when we have high cortisol and we're stressed out, that's what our body does. So we can make carbohydrates, and there's that school of thought out there that goes, oh, we better take it in, and that way our body won't make it. That's not always the case either, because I've had clients who eat a variety of carbohydrates and a more of a high carb approach, and yet their cortisol is still through the roof because some of those carbs can be inflammatory and inflaming their system. So that's causing a cortisol spike. That's causing more gluconeogenesis to the point where many people who are on a high carb diet go onto a low carb diet thinking they're going to lose weight, and they actually stay pre-diabetic because they haven't addressed the stress yet that's behind the cortisol breakdown. Okay. So do you need carbs? You can have them. There's nothing wrong. Your body, like I said, is very adaptable, but the studies show there is no deficiency symptoms that occurs even in complete absence of dietary carbohydrates. This study is in this paper. So all these things I'm going to be saying, they have put other studies in the paper for you to go check out. The small amount of glucose needed for the functioning of the brain, the red blood cells, and the eyes can be used creating other substrates via a process, like I said, called gluconeogenesis. So there is no actual need for carbohydrates. They're non-essential. However, they are essential because your body will make what it needs. And when you take in enough meat, the meat can be converted into glucose as well. So a lot of people say to me, well, oh, carnivore is so dangerous because you need to have glucose for your brain. Okay, well, if your body needs that, it will make it from the protein. And if you're not taking in enough protein, and guess what protein it takes from? Your butt and your thighs, which are the biggest muscle groups that you have in your body. So when you start to break down muscle and you start to make glucose out of that, that's dangerous. You're actually breaking down hard-earned muscle and slowing down your metabolic rate. So that's not very pro-metabolic to do that. So what we need to realize is that taking in enough meat will put protein in the tank, but it will also leave some space if your body needs to break down that protein and turn it into valuable amino acids that turn into sugar for the body or glucose. Okay. Your body's super smart. Like, get out of the way and just like take in the foods that are logical and common sense to us and make us feel good, and your body will do what it needs to do with those foods. Okay. Barring that it's not something inflammatory, which we're going to go into, because do we really need a lot of gluten containing foods? Do we need a ton of fruit every day? Do we need a ton of vegetables every day? Do we need 6 to 8 servings? I can tell you, myself included, when I used to do 6 to 8 servings of veggies a day, I had so much digestive upset. Okay. And it doesn't matter if they were cooked or raw, it didn't matter to my body. And that's one of the things I have to work on with people is they're like, oh, no, 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 no. I eat like a bag of broccoli at dinner and I eat a big salad at lunch and I just can't figure out my gut. Well, we're not ruminants. Okay. We're not cows. We don't have multiple stomachs to break down a lot of roughage. So we have to go back to that wolf's digestive system. It's a very short digestive system. I myself have a very short torso. In fact, my ribs and my hip bones touch my ribs. That's how short torsoed I am. But I'm tall, but I just have this very narrow digestive system. And I find, oddly enough, that people with very short-waisted torsos actually have more digestive issues than my clients who have like long torsos, and maybe their digestive system is stretched out a little bit. That's just my own theory, but something to think about. Go back to logic and common sense, right? So debunking, the number 2 debunking I want to do is heart disease from the article. So this paper said that, the common theory is that saturated fats, animal fats, increase heart disease risk. And this has been challenged in this paper. Findings have been confirmed in nearly 24 systematic reviews and meta-analysis of large clinical trials that increased saturated fat consumption by 2 to 3 fold either has no effect on fatty acids in the blood or very little, if any. So the higher red meat consumption specifically, a lot of people are like, oh, I can't have red meat because of my heart. And a lot of times with low carb diets, people are using a higher red meat consumption. That's also thought to cause heart disease and cancer. However, the most rigorous comprehensive reviews of the data on red meat shows that the best available evaluation of all the evidence out there does not support concerns that red meat causes these diseases. And you can look more into this too with studies backed by I think the book's called The Big Fat Lie about saturated fats. So that's a really good read if you have access to that. Okay, digestive issues. You know, I don't hear this about people complaining about digestive issues from eating meat. Generally, when I put them on meat, that's when they start to feel better. But the evidence is out there that people are like, oh, meat causes me to have GERD or gout or reflux or gut issues. So we're going to debunk this from this article. Um, the logic question is, like I said, have you ever seen meat in your stool? Probably not. This paper showed that patients with gastroesophageal reflux disease, that GERD, have seen their symptoms improve on a meat-based low-carb diet. The paper also mentioned previous studies that showed women with obesity found that higher amounts of carbohydrates worsened GERD, which I have found to be true with my women that I consult with. If they're doing a lot of gluten, a lot of breads, a lot of pastas, and they're like, oh, at night I just can't even lay flat. I got to sit up because of my acid reflux. Yeah, anytime we take them off of gluten and off of these processed carbohydrates, gone. Okay. And while a high fat, low carb diet reduced their symptoms of GERD. Also, with regard to gallstones, multiple clinical trials have found that diets higher in fat prevent gallstones. Yeah. And by contrast, most people would think, because of what's mainstream out there, is that diets low in fat increase, your gallbladder production, but not the case. It actually increased risk of gallstone formation. So we need that fat. That's the whole purpose for the gallbladder. Again, common sense and reasoning says, okay, some sort of creator put a gallbladder in me to squirt out bile to emulsify my fat. So it stands to reason that if I don't have any fat, what's going to happen to that bile? Is it going to get sludgy and stodgy and back up and make stones? Probably. So we need to have fat coming in for the bile to squirt out, to emulsify, to digest and assimilate, to break down so our body can utilize those fatty acids. So this is just, again, going back to common sense. Okay, kidney damage. How many times have you heard, oh, high protein diets are going to hurt your kidneys? Well, if that was the case, I'd have been dead a long time ago because I eat probably more protein than my husband does. And I'm, probably what, 60 pounds less than he is. So yeah, kidney damage on a high protein diet is a myth we need to debunk. So the paper touches on this. A systematic review pointed to several studies showing that ketogenic diets, or those that were higher in meat, higher in protein, can be therapeutic for kidney disease. The authors also concluded that the diet can be safely prescribed in patients with type 2 diabetes for treating and remitting diabetes, even if they have underlying stage 2 or 3 chronic kidney disease or reduced kidney function. So a lot of people are not going to see that this is the case. They're going to go, oh my gosh, if you have any sort of chronic kidney disease, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, you need to stay away from protein. Not the case. In fact, there is a gal that recently was just on the Sean Baker podcast that actually talks about how a carnivore approach or a meat-based approach actually helped her repair her kidneys. So I thought that was really interesting. Even diets higher in protein were not found to damage healthy kidneys in a 2018 meta-analysis. Okay. So yeah, don't be afraid of protein and meat if you're dealing with any sort of kidney thing. Instead, why don't you crowd out the things that are inflammatory to the body, like gluten, soy, for some people, dairy, refined sugars. Okay, crowd those out and include more animal protein and see what happens to your health overall, including your kidney function. Get rid of the sodas, get rid of the Mountain Dew. I had one client that was like a guy, and he drank 6 Mountain Dews a day. And he's like, I don't know why I'm so tired. I have a lot of caffeine in my Mountain Dew, and I have all this joint pain, and I get home from work and I just can't think straight, and I just am exhausted all the time. So all I did, we didn't even change his food. I just said, you know what, let's titrate down. Let's start with like 5 bottles of Mountain Dew and replace one with water. So he did that for the first week. The second week, another bottle for water. Like we kept swapping out the bottles of Mountain Dew for water. And by the end, the last time I consulted with him, miraculously, all of his issues were gone, and he was still drinking 1 bottle of Mountain Dew a day, but the rest was all water. So that shows you how powerful just removing inflammatory things are to your approach to increasing your health as well. Sometimes it's not about adding stuff in, it's just about taking stuff out and replacing it with more bone and tissue and gut and thyroid building amino acids. Okay. Number five that we're going to, or four that we're going to debunk, that was kidneys. So is this four or five? I don't know. But this one I love because this happened to me. So debunking the thyroid slowing down on low carb diet. So my thyroid went sluggish whenever I was exposed to toxic mold back in 2017. And I actually healed my thyroid without medication with a 4-month carnivore approach. So all meat for 4 months. And I know this is not something that most people want to do to help their thyroid, but this paper too, this paper and just recently that came out shows that subjects on a low carb diet maintained their metabolic rate and lost more weight when following a diet high than when following a diet high in carbohydrates. So I say that to say that a lot of people have this theory that going low carb slows down your T3 production. It slows down your thyroid. You're going to have metabolic issues. You're going to slow down your BMR. You're going to increase cortisol. None of that is what I've seen. When someone crowds out all these inflammatory foods and actually starts to increase their protein, the thyroid gets warmer. Okay. Protein is thermogenic, so it heats your body up. And if your body's running hotter, that means your thyroid's working better. Okay. So if you're cold all the time and you're only consuming about 30 grams of protein a day, it's time to amp that up. It's time to get 30 grams of protein at every sitting. Okay, and see how much warmer you feel. Think about a time when you've had like a big meat dinner. Maybe you had a bunch of brisket or something like that, and how that night when you're sleeping, you're like thrown off the covers, you're hot. Okay, your body got that thermogenic fat burning effect from the protein. So imagine if you included that all day long, how warm you would be running. And that is an indication of your thyroid function. So no, I have not seen any slowdown of thyroid or metabolic function as I do more of what I call carnivore with benefits. Like I eat mostly meat, but I'll have things like, occasionally roasted Brussels sprouts because I like them and they digest well, or maybe some berries, or from time to time, maybe some sort of dairy like a Greek yogurt. All of that does well with me. We have to start to learn what creates what I call no digestion. Like you're bringing in food and you're like, I don't feel anything happening in my gut. That tells me in the gut level that you're doing good. We got to bring in foods that also don't leave you with a headache, don't leave you with blood sugar swings and spikes and anxiety and a feeling of like a racy heart and things like that. All of that is your body telling you, I'm not okay with this food. This doesn't resonate with me. I always say, don't be in an abusive relationship with your food. You might love peanut butter, but it doesn't love you back. So you're in an abusive relationship. It's abusing you every time you bring it in. So that's where you want to go, okay, maybe I need to crowd out those things that are slowing down my thyroid or causing me to have these symptoms that I need to somehow get rid of so that my health overall improves. Okay. All right. Next one. Debunked is that I love this one too because I'm an athlete. So that athletes can't do carnivore or low carb. Well, that's wrong. And the article points that out. So we'll get into that. But I myself can attest to this, okay? Because as a pro stand-up paddle athlete and someone who recently did an ultra on a carnivore approach, I can attest to what the paper mentioned, that low carb diets have not been shown to be deleterious to athletes. So I did better than I thought I would on the ultra. It took me 5 hours and 44 minutes. And I thought, I'd be lucky to get 6.5 hours. And I was eating meat and keto bricks, from Live Savage, from Robert Sykes. So those kept me going during the race. I didn't have bags of jelly beans and all kinds of, carbohydrate drinks and things like that. I had electrolytes and I had meat sticks and I had keto bricks, and that got me through. So I can attest to I did better than I thought I would. And I stayed well, and it wasn't hard to do. It wasn't as hard to do as I thought it would be to run 31 miles, to run a 50K. So, and the same with when I go for long distance paddles, I take protein. I take protein balls, or I take keto bricks, like I said, or I take some sort of meat sticks and salt packets. Like I'll be dipping my hand in my little baggie of salt and putting it in my mouth. I need electrolytes, I need salt, but I don't need sugar to paddle long distances. My body is fat adapted, so I can take in fat and use that as an energy substrate. I don't need sugary things to perform better. So the studies in this article show that ketogenic diets or low carb diets helped athletes improve their body composition, trim fat, maintain performance, and improve recovery. These studies have included marathon runners, CrossFit athletes, elite gymnasts, and others performing high intensity exercise or interval training, as well as military personnel. So all of the studies that they're talking about with this particular like athlete issue are in there. So they're really cool to check out. Okay, now finally, in the article, what you want to go look at is the food guide pyramid that encourages, it just is so encouraging to look at because you look at it and you go, you know what, that makes sense. That makes that logic, common sense of like, let's have protein. Here's some space for veggies. Here's some space for fruits. Okay, and then you can decide for yourself what resonates with your system. Remember, bioindividuality. We want to eat things that love us back and trust yourself. There's a lot of diet dogma out there. There's this doctor saying you should only eat plants. There's that doctor saying don't eat any plants because they all have lectins and oxalates and all these like toxic poisons in them. Okay, what does your body say? Okay, trust your body. When you eat something, do you feel good or do you not? And when you eat this other food, do you feel well or does it make you tired? Okay, start to pay attention to that and do maybe like a food log and notice what foods really boost your energy, what foods drag you down, and start to weed out and make your own protocol. Trust yourself. That's what I tell a lot of my clients is you need to learn how to trust your intuition because I have clients that go, "Can I eat this?" And I say to them, "I don't know, can you?" What happens when you do? This is things that you need to ask yourself. Like, ask if this is something that really helps me be my most optimal. I've had people that go, oh my gosh, I can't have a sandwich at lunch because then I'm just so tired in the afternoon. Okay, that's probably your body having a blood sugar spike from the gluten in the bread. So perhaps take everything that would be on the sandwich and just have that, and maybe have some fruit on the side, and maybe make the meat that would be on your sandwich a little bit more substantial, like replace the gluten-containing bread with maybe more protein and see how you feel. And just notice, play around. We are our own scientific experiment. So what works for one might not work for the other. We are an N of one study. So every time I work with someone, I go, okay, this protocol is yours. This is not a generic protocol that I'm going to put you on. This is just for you. So don't expect your husband or your best friend or your daughter to eat this way because they're going to need something different. Your body is unique. And so we need to remember that. And that takes me into the body aspect of meat, body, and soul. So listening to the body is essential. Natural human rhythms are essential to health. Circadian biology tells us that we need movement, we need sunlight, we need nature, we need grounding, we need sleep, we need rest. We need to not spend so much time on devices. You'll feel symptoms of anxiety, headaches, eye strain, sleep issues when you spend too much time during your day on devices. Ask yourself, how much time am I on a device, a phone, a tablet, a computer versus outside? Hmm. And is that logic common sense? Because humans didn't come into existence with devices. They were outdoor creatures. So assuming that we're trying to attain better health, wouldn't it stand to reason that we need to be in the environment that's conducive for health? Most people get sick and colds because they're inside recycled air buildings all the time. Whereas when you're outside, you get natural humidity, you get natural essential oils from the tree that are antimicrobial. You get fresh air, you get sunlight. All of these things are conducive to boosting your body's immune system. But when we're inside office buildings for 8, 10 hours a day, breathing recycled air and everybody else's germs that are being filtered through and not being regulated by sunshine and fresh air and essential oils that are found in nature, then it's no wonder we get sick so often. So spending more time in nature, using sunlight to make vitamin D and other hormones, walking outdoors, hiking, running, paddling. You want to go paddle with me? Bicycling, even simply just gardening or sitting outside watching the clouds go by. I love to do that. Will calm your anxiety, will improve your eyesight. How much are we looking at short-term vision things like this computer versus looking at the horizon? Go out every hour if you're on a computer and look at the horizon. Strengthen your eyes. It's no wonder so many people are needing glasses, okay, and readers and things like that. We need to strengthen our eyes. Our eyes are a muscle too, and they get shortened muscles by just looking at short distances. Or I guess it's the opposite way. I'm not an eye expert, but I think your muscle lengthens, and like that's what nearsighted is, or the muscle gets longer. Anyway, So getting adequate rest and sleep, that's another feature of the body, how we recover, how we rebuild our tissues. If you're trying to build bone and you have osteoporosis, but yet you're only sleeping 2 or 3 or 5 hours a night, we need to work on that because that's part of healing. Yes, we're going to include animal protein, but for the body aspect of it, we need to go back to those body rhythms that really build the appropriate health status. Repairing damage, removing toxins, these are all things that I've worked on and I love working on with clients to eliminate their issues. And finally, the soul. So contrary to popular belief, we don't have a soul, we are a soul, okay? The Hebrew word nephesh or the Greek word psyche translates to mean earthly creatures or that which is tangible, okay? Visible, mortal, life, the person, one's whole being. So we are a soul. Part of improving one's soul as a person, as an inner self, is emotional work, digging deeper into symptoms like when they began. Usually after something traumatic, somebody will come to me and go, oh, my health issues, are these gut issues? And I have this, that, and the other. And I'm like, when did these start? And they'll go, oh, well, I went through this really stressful time. And they kind of gloss over that. And I always go back to it. Tell me about that. What happened? What felt undigestible to you during that time? And they'll go, oh, I never thought about that. Like maybe they're kind of stuck in the fact that they went through this trauma and they haven't processed it. And it was really not easy to swallow or not easy to digest. And they never dealt with that. So part of their digestive issues have to do with that trauma they're holding on to. So this is a highlight of what I love to work on. I've seen transformational differences when it comes to optimizing somebody's health just by addressing certain traumas that maybe they were just like, oh, let's sweep that under the rug. Let's not mess with that right now. What also for your inner self, what do you love to do that calms you down, that brings you pleasure, that creates life and purpose, pleasure, passion, purpose, playtime? That's vitamin P. That's what I call it. So we need vitamin P in every day. Whether it's reading a good book, spending time with family, working on a hobby that you love, taking a long hot Epsom salt bath, journaling, self-care of any kind, or self-nourishment is another way I like to call it. I've seen many overcome health issues just not even addressing things like health and nutrition, just self-care. I've seen people lose weight just by getting rid of a toxic job or a toxic relationship or just addressing their self-care needs, okay? So all that to say, that's what Meat, Body, and Soul stands for. Now we can see, based on science, but also logic, common sense, that this idea of including protein, of listening to your body, of addressing things that are stressful to you or toxic or emotional trauma is important. And so if you're still watching this, and even though I wasn't able to communicate with you today, I'm sorry about the chat. And this is something that you're trying to do. You really want to achieve health, and you want to figure out how to do it because the article did mention always work with someone, a practitioner, to make sure your dietary needs are met. So if you want to go meat-based, if you're trying to play around with carnivore or carnivore with benefits or whatever, make sure you have someone to assist you to make sure that they are an outsider looking and going, oh, what about this, right? And that's where I can assist you. I have a couple different options for you. So I do a full nutrition therapy consultation, which is at least 90 minutes. And we go over everything. I have you fill out a symptom burden analysis. I look at blood work. I look at hair tissue mineral analysis, if that's something that you have recently. And then we go over that and we build a protocol together. And it's on a recorded Zoom call, so you can go back and review it because a lot of times we only retain about 10% of what somebody says. So this way you can go back and listen to the whole interview again. Now, that one is $229. If somebody is not wanting to do that big of an expense, or if they just can't find that much time in their schedule, I also offer 30-minute, what I call express coaching. Okay, so maybe you just want to bounce some ideas off of me and ask me about some certain issues that you're experiencing, or maybe you want to say, what about this? What do you think of this? That's what the express coaching is for. So 30 minutes, we can get to the bottom of a lot of different things in 30 minutes, and that's $99. I also send you a little questionnaire for that too. So ahead of time, I already know what we're dealing with, that we can get right down to the nitty gritty and use that 30 minutes to the fullest extent. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to email me at getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com. That's JODELLE. Or you can go to meatbodyandsoul.com. That's my current website. And you can email me there. And that way we can get you on schedule for one of those. So yay, I did a live. Thank you for watching. And I'm going to try to do more of these. And I will promise on the next one, I'll have the chat all figured out so I can answer questions. In the meantime, I really appreciate you guys listening and tuning in today, and I hope that you have gleaned some sort of nutrition nuggets out of this that you can take and run with you. Don't forget to go look up that carnivore food guide pyramid. It's really interesting, and I think you'll find it something that you can put on your fridge and go, hey, this makes sense. I think I'm gonna like elicit this into my life and see what happens. And I'm in your back pocket if you need me.